Hey, everybody. I'm Luke McNeil. And today we're going to talk about well, it's not that new, but a suite of creative software that's cross platform. It works on Windows and Mac and also iOS, so iPads. And it's basically a competing suite to Adobe's products. So we have Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, an Affinity Publisher. And the reason we're talking about these products is because the company that makes them, Serif, is offering right now a 90-day trial for all of their products, and everything that they make is currently 50% off. So it makes a lot of sense for us creatives to be playing with the tools that are provided to us for free right now. That's what we're going to do. Now, I want to explain to you a little bit about how this is going to go today. I'm going to give you an overview of Affinity Photo on my iPad. I'm going to show you where all the tools are. Right, we're going to look at all the different menu options and kind of see where it's similar to tools you might already be familiar with. Just a general overview. Right after that, I'm going to give you an overview of how to work with layers and masks, because a lot of the things that we're going to do today are going to depend on layers and masks. So we need to make sure that you are familiar with how those work. After that, after we go through the overview of Affinity Photo and the layers and masks, we're going to take a longer than usual break. And during that break, the links are in the show notes here for you to go and download Affinity Photo. So you go to the website and give them your email address and contact information, and then they will email you license keys for all of their products, and you can use that to install the free 90-day trial. When we come back from the break, we're going to get into actually using these tools to make some cool stuff. I'm going to show you how to do some neat effects, right? As soon as I can get my computer to stop beeping at me. With that being said, let's get started. So let's pop over into the wonderful, magical world of my iPad, and I'll show you what this is all about. Don't worry, I'm going to give you time to install the apps later so you can follow along. It's going to be cool. Here we go. Let's jump over. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Here we are. Like it's the future. We can do sophisticated streams like this. So this is the wonderful world of my iPad. And let's bust open Affinity Photo. This is the app we're going to be using today. Affinity Photo. This is very similar to Adobe Photoshop or other tools, Corel Draw, kind of other tools you might be familiar with. It's made by a company called Serif. They're out of Europe, and these tools are really, really good. I like the way they're laid out. So this is the main screen of Affinity Photo. It shows you a bunch of open projects, things that you've been working on or downloaded or whatnot. There's not much going on here except you got a help thing over here, and you've got some main settings for the app, and then there's a little plus to create a new document, right? So I'm going to create a new document so we can show you what the interface of the app looks like. All right. So to create a new document, I'm going to hit this little plus key, and I get all these different options of what kind of document I want to create. I could import one from my cloud storage, iCloud or Google Drive or something like that. But I'm just going to create a brand new document, right? And because I like to post a lot of the things that I make on social media, I'm learning that it's best for me to just make a square. I've tried the other image formats, and a square is it looks good everywhere it gets presented. So let's make a web document. And under the size options, way down at the bottom here, I'm going to pick a social media square post. Don't worry too much about this, right? I'm just doing this as an example. We're going to go through it slower once you have this installed. So this is the main window with a blank square document on Affinity Photo. I also want to note that I'm using this Apple Pencil, which is a sophisticated stylus. You don't need it to do this. You could use your fingers, or you could use whatever stylus you have, the Logitech one. But with the Apple Pencil, it's madness. It really does feel like writing on paper sometimes. So let's get started here. Over on the left side of my screen, you can see the standard tools here, right? I got my hand tool and my move tool and an eyedropper tool. This is the stuff that you would see in any sort of creative software, right? Corel Draw or Photoshop or whatever. Um, that's to be expected. So here's your main tools for what you're working on. Up at the top, there is a menu bar. The first option here is to go back to the main menu if you want to go back and start a new document. So if we do that, we just go back to this screen. Next, we have a little file menu. So that gives you some options to resize your canvas or export things, save copies, the stuff you'd find in the file menu of any standard application. Next to that, we have a contextual more menu. And I'll explain that more later. But what's in this menu changes depending on what you're doing in the app. That's what I want you to understand. So right now, this is what's in our contextual more menu. Next to those, you can see there's little dividers between these icons too. The third set of icons here, there's 6 different icons. Affinity calls these personas, and these are just collections of tools. So right now we are on the photo persona, and when we're on the photo persona, this behaves like a drawing app or a photo manipulation app. Next to that, we have a selections persona. And the selections persona changes all the tools that we have over here in our toolbar, right? This is a whole suite, a whole workspace just for selecting things. So if you wanted to select a person in a photo and cut that person out so you could change the background, this gives you a whole suite of tools to do that in different ways. So it's very helpful. And it's all the same stuff you could do in these other apps. It's just a different way of laying it all out. Next to that, we have this. It doesn't have an image on it yet, so I can't show you what this does, but I'll just tell you what it is. This is the Liquify persona, and Liquify is a tool for pushing and pulling pixels, like pushing them around and changing things. So you could use that to make somebody's eyes really big, or they use it in fashion magazines and stuff to make people look slimmer, push in the cheekbones, whatever it is you do. This is for taking a picture and morphing it, distorting it, pushing it around. It's a cool persona. Next to that, we have the develop persona. This is similar to the tools that you would find in Adobe Lightroom. So when I say that, if you were to import like a raw photo from your camera, this would be where you'd have control over the shadows and the highlights and the exposure and the same tools that we saw in the Lightroom tutorial a couple weeks back. Next to that, we have a tone mapping persona, and I haven't even played with the tone mapping persona, but what it is it's for if you're into making HDR images or taking stacks of images and then putting them all together into one more detailed image. This is a suite of tools for doing that and making like big panoramas and stuff like that. So it's when you're stitching together several photos, you can use these tone mapping tools. And next to that, we have an export persona, which is really, I think, intended for creative professionals that are doing like icon designs for websites or games or things like that. So pretend we drew a logo and now we want that logo in a bunch of different sized files, right? We might need one for a billboard, and we might need one for a cereal box, and we might need one for to show up on somebody's social media post. So export, this dialog gives you super powerful tools to be able to export your work to all those formats at once, and maybe even slice it up into a bunch of different pieces. Like imagine this was just a bunch of different icons and we wanted to slice them all into their own individual files. This is where you would do that. So these are the personas, right? You don't have to worry about most of these. For what we're doing, and most of the time for photography and the kind of work that I do anyway, we're going to stay in the photo persona and the selections persona. Every once in a while, we'll pop into Liquify, but these are the two main ones, and these are the tools that you'll mostly want to get yourself acquainted with. We're going to use them a lot later, so don't worry about it. All right. So that's our top menu. These are our personas. These are our tools over here. On the right menu, they call these studios. And as I click these, they open up my different panels. So you can see here I have my layers panel. So We went over layers a little bit in last week's presentation. We'll go over them again shortly, so don't worry if you don't kind of grasp layers yet. We're going to go over them. But here's where your layers are. They call this the Layers Studio in Affinity. Under that, we have our color wheel, color picker. This is similar to what we saw in Procreate and Photoshop. You can change it if we decided we wanted to work with a predefined set of color swatches to match somebody's branding or desire. I mean, we could switch that over to swatches and just pick from predefined palettes, right? Or you could just use this and you go around the wheel, and this wheel is selecting our colors. So that's the color picker. Under that, we have our brush tool. So like in Procreate, we have a whole bunch of brushes. It starts out with our basic, soft, hard, round brushes. But up in this menu here where it says basic, if we scroll through these options, here we have our acrylic brushes. We have dry media brushes. There's engraving brushes, which are kind of cool. Gouaches. This is a watercolory, blendy kind of situation, I think Lisa described it to me as. We have inks, markers, pencils, pens, sprays, and spatters, which are good. So, like spray paints and droplets and things like that. Textures for drawn textures, oils, watercolors, masks. And then here's some brushes that I've imported from Photoshop. So that's a cool thing about Affinity is you can use Photoshop brushes. Your mileage may vary based on the quality of the brush that you're using, features that it supports, but it can be done, and I've done it. Under that, we have our basic adjustments. So these are if these are basic adjustments, like a black and white filter, or you could change a color balance here, our curves and levels, and the types of tools that we would use in Photoshop to manipulate photos are in here. We have some lens kind of flary effects and a few different tools. You don't have to worry about all of them, but if you're looking to just quickly brighten something up or change the contrast or get a curves adjustment going on, they're found here in these adjustments in the Adjustments Studio. Under that, we have filters, which are more like filters, Instagram filters. So they're applying different looks and effects. So this is where our blurs are. This is where you find tools like clarity. There's a bunch of cool stuff in here that you can use for all sorts of things. We'll use some of them. I'll show you some of them, the ones I know about and the ones that I've used for certain effects. Under that, we have our character tools. So if you're doing work with text, if you're laying out a logo or doing a flyer or something like that, this is where you have all your tools to change the font, the size, if it's underlined, that sort of stuff. Next, we have metadata. This shows the histogram of our photo. The histogram, there's no photo here right now, so you're not seeing any data. The histogram is a graph that shows you a representation of the shadow information in a picture and the highlights and the range between them, where all of the information is in that photo. And it also gives you the EXIF information from like your camera. So it's going to have your aperture that you took the photo at and what shutter speed it was set at and all that sort of information. Very cool, right? So under here, we have our channels. The channels is a different way to show the information in a photo, and it's breaking the spectrum into red, green, and blue. And then it shows us, I should probably import a photo here so you can actually see data in there. But what they do, it shows the amount of red as brightness. So all of these channels look black and white, and the white bits are representing red in the red channel, and in the green channel, the white bits are representing green. It's a tool that you can use for things like selections, and that's really the only thing I've ever used channels for, is to make complex selections, like to select somebody's hair off of a rocky background or something like that, a difficult selection. Under that, we have a transform studio. This gives us basic tools to like flip the image horizontally or vertically, or to resize it. I don't really use this much, but if you needed to flip an image, this is where you could do that. Under that, we have a navigator. This is like a zoom tool if you wanted to zoom in or out on an image. Down below that, there's some macros for predefined sets of tasks. If you keep doing something repetitively and you think you could automate that task, you could create a macro down here and run that macro instead of redoing the same thing over and over and over again. Under that, we have assets. I'm not really sure what assets is. I think this is to load things. Like if you had predefined icons, you could load them like a library in here to use, but I haven't used this assets studio, so I'm not really sure what it's there for. This one's awesome. So under the little grid here, there's a photo icon, and this photo icon is the stock studio. And the stock studio integrates with 3 different free stock photo search websites. So, right in Affinity, you can search Pixabay, Unsplash, and Pexels for stock imagery, which is fantastic because you can use that stock imagery in your work for free. Right. So let's just show you this real quick. Let's say I want a bridge in my photo. I can just type bridge in here and it gives me all these bridges. And I can just pick whatever bridge I want to use in my photo and just there's my bridge. Right. This is too big, so let me resize it. And then shoop. Right. It's that easy to use stock imagery. And that's kind of a game changer for compositing because you really can make anything at any time when you're just sitting on your couch. If you have an idea, just type it into stock and pull it up and play with it. Very, very cool. Under that, we have our history. So this shows the historical representation of all the changes we've made on the document, everything that we've done. If we needed to reverse it or go back to a certain point in time, this is where that would happen. Now, there's one other set of tools I want to show you in this interface, and it's related to your main suite of tools over here, right? So let's say I select the photo persona where all my normal tools are. I call them my normal tools because this is like my brush and my fill tool and the stuff I use all the time. Let's grab from here. What am I trying to show you again? Let's grab from here my brush. So now this is just a standard paintbrush tool. I can draw on the image any way I want. But what I want to call your attention to is the bottom of the screen. You see that a little window pops up down here that gives me options about the brush. So they're contextual for the tool that I'm on. So I use these with my finger. I could use the pen too, but it's easy to work with 2 hands here on the iPad to adjust the size of my brush. You see as I pull this width thingy up and down, it's changing the size of my brush, which can be very fast and natural. It's very cool, right? I also have on this Apple Pencil, there's some kind of button technology. I don't know. It just feels like a flat part. But if I double tap my finger on this, it should. Oh, it's not working. I take it back. It should undo. Oh, there it goes. It undoes my last change, which is pretty weird. I'm not used to you got to tap just right, I guess, for it to work. But that's what it does. It's pretty neat. Another way to undo, though, if you don't have the pencil, is just to double tap twice, and that's usually what I do. So with not double tap twice, but double tap with single tap with 2 fingers. All right. So you use 2 fingers and you tap down, and that will undo your change. If you want to redo your change, then it's 3 fingers. So 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 2 fingers, 3 fingers. Very cool. What I was trying to show you is just this contextual menu down here that has some additional controls for the tool that you're using. So on my brush, I can control the width of the brush and the opacity of the brush. That means, hold on, let me get something going on here. So I can control the opacity of the brush. So if I turn this down to like 30%, now you can see that I'm not quite painting fully. It's just shading a little bit. And as we adjust the opacity, it gets darker, but you can still kind of see through it. You know, that's what opacity is. Flow is how much ink we're dropping down at any given time. So you note as I go over this now, it gets darker and darker. So I could shade something in. So I'm not going to explain all the different options for all the different tools here. We'll go into that as we use them. I just want you to know that on the left-hand side, we have our tools for whatever persona we're in. Up at the top, we have our main menu and our personas list here. Over towards the right, we have our modules. They call them studios. And this has all your little pop out menus and stuff. So that's where all the tools are in Affinity Photo. That being said, that's an overview of kind of what everything looks like. Now I want to have a short overview of layers and masks, because when we come back and we start doing real work with this, it's going to be important that you understand layers and masks. So here we go. I'm just going to delete what we've done here. Now, I'm going to start this document with a brand new layer. And you can think of layers as layers of an onion that you can stack on top of each other and see through. So that allows us a lot of flexibility, and especially control and going back and making changes to what we've done later. So check this out. Let's just draw a quick picture here. Don't make fun of my drawing skills, all right? We're going to put a nice little sun here. It's beautiful. We're going to put some sky. Nice sky. Doo-dee-doo. And then let's put some green grass. Some dark green grass. Green grass. Now what we have here, I'm going to go over here to my layers studio, and you can see that I have my picture here on this pixel layer. Let's create a new layer on top of that pixel layer. New pixel layer. Check it out. It looks exactly the same, right? And now if I draw, let's just pick a black color, and I'll make this a little smaller here. Let's just draw a dude. Here's my dude. Let's fix our opacity so we can see through it all the way. Makes more sense. Let's fix our flow so it's 100%. There we go. Now we're drawing our dude. Here he is. Cool. Now if we open our layers studio, you can see we have our background here and we have our dude on top of it. So what that means is I can turn this guy on and off, and that's okay, right? It doesn't affect the image. I can grab this and move it around and reposition it or resize it as I need to, because it's on its own layer. It has no background. It's an image that's on a transparent background, and it's showing you the image below it, right? So that's super useful. It's super cool. But what if we don't want to see the whole image? Like, we want control over what parts are showing through and what parts are not showing through. So for that, we have I guess you would call it a tool or a concept or a function called masks. So we can put a mask on top of our layer, and what a mask does is it allows you to mask it out. Think of if you were painting a house and you take the tape around and you put it around, the edges. You're masking that off. So when you paint, you're not gonna paint somewhere you're not supposed to, right? It's the same kind of idea. And masks work across all of these tools. So it doesn't matter if you're using Affinity Photo or Photoshop or Procreate or probably Corel. I don't know. There's a bunch of other tools that I haven't used, but they all kind of work in the same way. And not just photo apps either. Also, these concepts apply to video as well, and probably other practices. So it's important to understand. A mask is created to show and hide bits of a layer. That's all it does. So let's go here and create a mask layer on top of our dude that we created. So I'm going to create a mask layer. Now look, in our layers studio, next to my little icon of a dude, there's a little icon of just a white square. That's our mask. Our mask is just plain solid white. And what that means to the computer, what that tells the computer is, I want to see everything on this image, right? It's allowing everything in the image through so you can see it. White reveals things. If we want to conceal things or hide them, then we'll use black, and we can just paint on this mask where we want to hide bits of the image. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, let me show you. let's take our brush tool, and I'm going to pick black as my color. It's set to black, so cool. And then let's just drop this down and grab the mask. So I'm selecting the mask over here in the Layer Studio. And let's see what happens when I draw. Right? We can see that we're hiding our dude. That's very useful. And we're going to do a lot of this later today. So you can see as I draw here, all I'm doing is painting black on that little white thing. It even shows you a little representation of where I scribbled. And now if we hide the mask, it brings our dude back. We draw on we bring the mask back in and he hides, right? If we made a mistake, if we went too far, I can change this just back to white and paint him back in, right? So check that out. Now we're just painting him back in. Just give him a little bits of his legs, right? And then let's go back to black and we'll make him zigzaggy. This is just an example of how layers work. Maybe it'll help you see a little bit more if we also put a mask over on our background layer here. This one that we drew with the sun and the sky. Let's put a mask on that. Cool. So there's a mask on this layer. You can see this little white box. Great. Everything's white, so everything on the layer we can see. If we want to conceal bits of that layer, though, we can just paint with our brush, and it just hides the background. Note, I'm just hiding the background of the background. See our dude, he's cool. He's still there, right? He's on top of this because he's in his own layer, right? He's up here on top. He's just sitting atop, right? So hopefully this gives you some understanding of layers and masks and why they're helpful, how they're important. I'm going to show you practical uses of this when we come back from the break. I'm going to give you about a 15-minute break now to go check out the show notes here. I have the links to Affinity so you can download these apps for your computer if you're at the computer, or on iPad. I think Affinity right now is $10. So if you want to follow along, you got 15 minutes to do that. Remember, when you go to the site, you give them your email address and contact information, and then they'll just right away email you license keys for all their products. And then when you download and install the package for Mac or Windows, you just put in that license key and you'll be good for 90 days. So try it out. We're going to come back in about 15 minutes. Hopefully some of you will be with us, and I'll just give you a little show of what we're going to make. So we're not going to make these exact images, but I'm going to show you these techniques. Here's the crazy eye in the sky thing. We're going to make this out of nothing. Then we're going to make this dispersion effect where somebody just blows apart into nothing. We're going to do that out of nothing on our iPads here today. And then if we have time, I'm going to show you how to do a pop-out kind of 3D looking effect like this. So let's see how we do. I don't know how long these are going to take. I've done it a few times, so we should be good. But I'm going to try all new images. Right? So this hasn't been staged. We're going to do it live together. And we're going to deal with whatever issues arise as they arise. All right. With that being said, let's get to the break. And we'll see you back here at about 10:45.
We're recording.
You don't touch that. All right. We good?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm John Gerard.
Luke McNeil.
I'm Adrian Fox, and we're going to be playing 500 Miles by the Proclaimers and Stand By Me by Ben E. King.
1, 2, 3. When I wake up, yeah, no, I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, no, I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. And I will walk 500 miles, and I would walk 500 more just to be the man who walks 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
I'm Luke McNeil. I host a song challenge every week in which we pick a topic, we have an audience pick a topic, and then all of our songwriters are encouraged to write a song about that topic. This month's topic is liquor at the laundromat, and I wanted to make this video to show you sort of what my songwriting process looks like. So to start out, we have a month to do this challenge. It's due tomorrow and I haven't started, so that's generally how it goes. I like to wait until the last possible minute when I have to write a song, or else I'll look like an idiot or I can't do anything. So this is my song. We're starting from scratch. I have no idea where this is going to go. Start out with a couple of chords. There we go. That sounds nice. And then I'll start sort of mumbling. I made my home at a place called Molly Malone's. Not Molly Malone. I don't like Molly Malone's. What I'm trying to say, my boss today told me about this place that used to exist and no longer does, called Sudsy Malone's, which was an Irish bar slash laundromat in Cleveland, maybe, that a lot of hardcore acts played at. And the place looks like it was awesome. So I'm going to try and write my song in the Sudsy Malone's sort of vein. I made my home at a place called Sudsy Malone. I signed my name on the sheet, and I cleaned my sheets, yeah. Oh, so that's enough of a song. I think that I can play around with that, and eventually it will turn into something coherent. So I'm going to keep doing that. You can watch if you want, or skip to the parts that get good, if any parts ever get good.
I'm in my home, a place called Sudsy Malone's. I brought my date there, she cleaned my underwear and
This isn't hard to do, but it's also not very easy, and I need to wait till the last minute in order to push myself to actually produce anything, because if I don't, then I'll just be like, I'll come up with a riff. Oh yeah, the song's great, yeah, the song is cool, and then I'll be like, nah, that sucks, and I will do that for hours, days, weeks, until the last minute when I end up rewriting everything anyway. So it's just easier for me to wait till the last minute and then be forced to produce. I probably shouldn't be making a video out of this because it's going to make it take longer. I've just learned, by looking it up, that Sudsy Malone's is in Cincinnati, which is, Cincinnati's in Ohio, right? Pretty sure. No, Cleveland's in Ohio. Cleveland, Cincinnati. It could also be Pennsylvania. Pretty sure it's Ohio, though. Okay, Google, where is Cincinnati?
Cincinnati, Ohio is 702
Ohio.
miles away.
There we go. There's a punk scene in Ohio? I find that interesting. Sometimes I've found that switching position helps. You know, go a little easy like Sunday morning, it gets me mellow. Let's try that. We're going to go with the mellow vibe now that I'm on the studio couch with the dog. It smells bad too, Sophie, you smell bad. Give this Seattle grungy vibe. I wash my clothes at a bar called Sudsy Malone. I met my baby there. She was playing with dye in her hair. Sign my name on the list. Number 7. Last time we came to this place, I didn't play till almost 11, and it sucked really bad, 'cause the crowd all went home right after number 6, and it wasn't fair. I had to stay 'cause I was washing a comforter there. I need my phone to do some research. Alright, I did some research and I found out that it was WKRP in Cincinnati. So I feel like that has to make it into the song somehow. Now, I've been playing with this sort of riff for about an hour and it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to try something totally different and see if that takes shape.
I met my girl, and she wanted to wash her clothes down the street from you. And she told me about this place in Cincinnati. Getting nowhere.
For some reason, it's just way easier to write a country song because they're all basically the same song. So I could just play like C, F, and G, and then that's gonna be. And even the melody is so pre-developed. Like I could do one of these. I drink my liquor and I launder all my money down at a place we all call Suds and Malone. I met my baby in Cincinnati. So I'm going to get this fancy future machine here to write down some of the themes that I had, and I'm just going to tell you some of the things I'm writing down. So first off is Sudsy Malone's, or Sudsy Maloney's. I'm not sure how you say it. Like baloney. I don't want to rhyme with baloney though. Sudsy Malone's. Then Cincinnati. Laundry. Betty Blowtorch. Those are the best, I guess, keys. Oh, and rock and roll. It's always rock and roll. Shouldn't even have to write that. It's all rock and roll, you know. And this is what the writing process looks like, if you've never seen it before. So now it's 11:08, and here's where I'm at with the Liquor at the Laundromat song. I woke up in a Cincinnati jailhouse. They took my shoes so I won't hurt myself. I don't think I'm gonna hang around here long. Soon enough, the judge gonna let me out. Baby, come, gonna get me from the courthouse just the way she always does. The driver's side's getting mighty tight with all the words we waste trying to pass the time. I like my liquor at the laundry.
that's for sure. Tonight it's Betty Blowtorch, tomorrow's morphine. We spend so much time there, they wash our clothes for free. Sudsy Malone, oh, and Suds Malone. Silence all the critics in my head. Sudsy Malone. Ta-da!
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Here we are. Hopefully by now you've had an opportunity to download and install the Affinity Photo software on your computer or on your iPad. Either way, very good. We are going to move forward here. I'm going to be on the iPad, but these concepts are very similar in both the desktop version and in Procreate or in Photoshop or whatever it is that you have, right? So these are applicable skills to any of them. Let's move over to the wonderful world of my iPad. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to just go back to my desktop here. All right. So to start off, we're going to open up Affinity Photo, which hopefully by now you've installed. Affinity Photo is this cool looking aperture dial right here. So this is the main Affinity Photo window. You might see something different the first time you open it up, having not worked with any documents. That's okay. You're still going to see the important stuff, which is really this little plus window, this little plus icon here. So we want to create a new document. We're going to do a brand new document for a social media post because social media is cool. And that's the point of all of this, is to be cool. Let's hit this little plus window. Actually, before I do, a little plug for my friend Crystal, who wrote this solo piano record called The Collective Responsive. I listen to it probably 4 times a week when I'm editing and doing creative stuff. So we're going to play her record here in the background. It shouldn't get in the way of my voice or anything, so it'll just be relaxing Bob Rossi type music for us. Thanks, Crystal, for letting us use it. All right, so let's get started. This little plus icon up here. Let's click on that. Now we have a bunch of options here to create a new document, but we're going to keep it simple and just pick the first one, new document. So click on new document, and we get some options here about what our document size is going to be and the color profile and that sort of stuff. Don't worry about it. The first drop-down box here gives us some types of documents that we might want to use. Let's go to web here, because Instagram post or Facebook post is going to be a web document. So let's go to web. And then under that, we have some options for different sizes. And these are sizes for different monitors. If you were doing like graphic design for websites and stuff, most of these would be, I mean, you'd know what these are. What we're interested in is at the very bottom of this list. There's a handful, well, there's 3 social media sized posts. So we have a square post, which is what I'm going to recommend that we use for now, because I'm into square posts. We have a social media story post, which is a different size. So if you're using like Facebook stories and things like that and putting stickers on them and stuff, that's not a square size. That's a different size here. It's 1080p, 1080 by 1920. Or a social media portrait post, that's for Instagram. So they offer a portrait size, non-square image. The problem with that is that I found that's been really annoying is that even though they do support that portrait size, they squash it to a square anyway when you're looking at your Instagram grid. And sometimes I don't like the way that happens. So that being said, that's my justification for choosing a square here. It's always gonna look the way you intended it to look. And that's it. So I'm just choosing web up there. That's the type of document. And then the size is going to be a square. Only thing we got to change. And then we hit OK. Once we do that, we have this just blank canvas and it fills the whole screen. I'm going to just pinch with my fingers to zoom this out. And you can do that as much or as little as you want, you know. To start out with this photo, we don't have a photo, so let's grab one, right? And this is going to be our sort of crazy eye in the horizon with the sky and some sort of ocean type thing in the foreground. So let's start out with our, let's start with the ocean. Let's find a cool picture of the ocean from our stock studio. So over on the right-hand side of the screen, the second icon up from the little clock, it looks like a photo. Let's click on that. And that brings up our stock studio. Up here, let's just make sure we're all choosing the same one. So flick through this list until you hit pixels. Let's make sure we're all looking at the same thing. So just to go through it again, you've opened up this here, the stock studio, and you've set our site here to pixels. Now in the search window, let's type ocean. And we get a whole bunch of images of oceans. So I'm just gonna take a look down here. What happened to our music? Let's make sure our music's still playing. It is, cool. Let's grab this one. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows down all the way to the left. So it's some clouds and an ocean. And I'm just going to grab it and drag it over into the main portion of our window here and then let go. That imports the picture into our image, right? Now, this picture that we're downloading, it's way bigger in size than our Instagram square here, so we're going to need to resize it. But first, I'm just going to click on this little photo to get rid of our studio here. And then I'm going to pinch out a fair bit and change my active tool. Right now, my tool is on the hand window, the hand tool, I guess. Let's change that to the move tool here. It's the one directly under it. It looks like a little arrow. You see when I do that, it gives me my little resize box here. So I can grab any of these edges and pull this image down. It's just because the image that we downloaded is a much higher resolution than the one that we're making. So we need to crop it the way we want. And really in this image, if we think about what we're creating, which maybe you don't visualize yet, but what we're creating is going to be an eye in the middle here that the water comes up to. And then we're not even going to use the sky at all. So we don't even care about the sky. So I'm just expanding this. I'm looking at the water, and I'm going to make the water at like right in the middle in the horizon. Maybe a little less. Let's do it like just a little less than halfway. Not quite 2/3, you know, somewhere around there. It doesn't really matter. Okay, cool. Right, so here we have our image now on our document. Let's just zoom in so we get some size there. You can see what I'm doing. All right. Cool. Now I'm going to open up my layers panel, and I want to call your attention to this frustrating thing. In the layer, you'll see the image that we pulled into Affinity is tagged. It's just called image. That means it's an image layer. It's different than a pixel layer that we would normally work with. What's different about it is it's immutable, and that means once you've imported this image, it cannot be changed. Think of immutability as like a record for something important, like a bank transaction or something. A Bitcoin transaction is immutable, and that once it's happened, it can't change. That's the idea here. So this is a protected image format until we modify it. That can be very, very frustrating. So all I want you to remember is if this thing says image, you probably want to change that by coming up to I think it's our contextual menu here, these dots, right? rasterize. Oh, hold on. I'm just going to make sure that I'm on that layer, right? I want to make sure this layer is selected. Then I'm going to hit this dot thing, go to rasterize, and then rasterize. And you can see that that image layer is now a pixel layer. The difference being a pixel layer is not immutable. We can change this to our heart's delight. Fantastic. So now we have a picture of our water. Let's find our next picture. The next thing we want to put in is the cool eye. So I'm going to open up my stock studio, and then let's find from here an eye. Make sure though that you are using the Pexels site, right? Because the Pexels site is the one the rest of us are using. So just so you see the same thing, use Pexels. When you're doing this on your own, you can pick whatever you want, cycle through them because they all have cool different options. This is for consistency. So Pexels. These are neat. Look at all these cool eyes we have to choose from. Which one would look cool coming up out of our water? I kind of like this one. Kind of like this one. But let's I don't want to make a snap decision here. I mean, everything rides on the eye we choose. Maybe this one. Let's just take this first one. Let's grab this first eye. Even though it's a little tilty, that's all right. Let's grab this first eye. Pull it on to our layer here. Okay. Now we have a big picture of an eye. Don't worry, the picture of the water is behind this layer, right? This has been imported as a new image layer. I'm going to do the same thing to this layer and turn it into a raster by going to these little dots. Rasterize, rasterize. So now they're both pixel layers. Cool. Now, because I can tell that this eye is being cropped, I'm just going to zoom out here and then make it smaller. Right? And the trick to getting it lined up the way that I want it is to open up this layers panel. I'm going to click on the layer, this pixel layer, and then above that, you see this little more menu. It's a circle with 3 dots. If I click that, it brings me to the layer options. Okay. I'm going to turn the opacity of this layer down a little bit, and you can see now that I can see through it. Now let's regroup, because that was kind of fast, and maybe you're not familiar with these concepts. So first, I'm going to start over. I'm going to do the same thing we just did. I'm going to take this layer and delete it, and I'm going to take this layer and delete it. Here we go. So right now we are back at a brand new document. If you are not at a brand new document, come over here to the second icon on the right. It looks like a stack. This is your layers studio, where all your layers are. If you have any layers in here, click on them and then click the little trash can to delete them, and make sure that you come back to this spot. You should be at just a blank white square. Now, we're just looking for a couple of pictures to make a thing out of. So Affinity gives us this stock studio that lets us search all the stock sites, which is cool. Open up the stock studio, and let's type in ocean. To keep it easy, let's just take the first ocean that shows up. It looks like an orange sky with some kind of choppy waters. So I'm just gonna hold my pen there. You could just use your finger and drag it into the image, like so. Now, the image is too big to fit in the size that we're making, so I'm just going to resize it so that it fits into our square. To do that, I'm going to zoom out with my fingers, like this, until I can see this blue box show up. If you don't see a blue box show up, it's probably because you're not on the arrow tool, right? over on the left-hand side of the screen. It's the third icon down. It looks like a little arrow. It's right under the hand. You need to be on that. That's called the Move tool. The Move tool also allows you to resize things, which is pretty handy. So make sure you've got your ocean picture, make sure you're on your Move tool, and make sure you're zoomed out far enough that you can see this blue box with all the little points on it. Once you're there, we just want to grab this box from one of the corners. Make sure you get a corner and not the top or the side. Grab a corner and pull it in, right? And we're just making it kind of the same box size. It's not the same ratio, so it's never going to fit completely in the square. We have to make a decision and crop it. That's all right. We don't care that much, right? So I'm just going to grab that and move it into our image and play with it until it kind of fits the way we want. This is perfect. This is actually a better image, I think. So, zoom in so you can see. Here we are. Now we have one image of our water in the sky. Great. Let's open up over here on the right in our studios. Open up the layers panel. The layers panel looks like this stack of papers. Notice that this layer has been imported as an image. And an image is just a special type of file format for Affinity Photo. It's protected. It's like locked. In order to unlock that image so that we can make modifications to it, we have to do a thing called rasterizing it, which is just a big word for a conversion. That's fine, and that is also applicable in all the other softwares too, right? You have the same sort of concept of raster images. You don't have to understand how they all work. You just need to know if this says image and it doesn't say pixel, then you just need to hit the rasterize button. That's as deep as you need to understand really about that process to do what we're doing. To get to the rasterize button, it's over here on the left side at the top. There's an icon, the third from the end. It's a circle with 3 dots on it. That's your contextual menu, right? Inside that menu, we have an option for rasterize. It's kind of towards the bottom-ish. When we click on rasterize, you get some options there. And we're just going to pick at the first one, which is rasterize. Right? Rasterize. Now you can see that over in my little panel here, that doesn't say image anymore. It says pixel. It's a confusing thing. It's annoying. And I'm sorry it does it that way. If there's a way to change the default behavior of that, if I learn it, I will teach you. But for right now, that's the way I know how to do it. So we've converted this image that we took from the stock studio to a pixel layer. Everybody cool there? I hope you are. Excellent. Now, we're going to go back to the stock studio and we're going to find another image. That image is going to be of our eye. So let's go to here. Make sure you're at pixels. Right? And let's type in eye. Don't worry if you get lost. This is being recorded, so you can always, follow along, see what's possible, try and understand what's happening, and then rewatch the video and go through step by step until you get it. So if you get lost, it's okay. Don't worry too much. Just follow along. We're going to move on to another image anyway, and you'll have a fresh start. So for the eyes, I don't like our first eye anymore because it's a little crooked. So I'm going to take this eye, the third one, the one to the right here, where this blue is, right? So I'm going to grab that eye and just drop it into our image. It's pretty good where it landed. It might be a little big for our image. So you can see that I'm already on the Move tool. If you're not on the Move tool, make sure that your tool is set over here to the little arrow, right? The arrow is key. That gives you this little box. If you don't see the box, it might be because you're not zoomed in enough, right? I zoomed out enough, rather. So make sure you pinch until you can see this box, and then you can resize by grabbing those points. Get back on this tool. Resize this eye a little bit. And that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to move it to the center. Like so. Pretty groovy. Now, you'll see we have our two images. One of them says pixel. That's the one that we went up to the rasterize thing and did that whole conversion bit. And then one of them says image. I'm just going to go ahead and convert that to a pixel layer right now, just to save myself time later. So I'm going to go to the dot menu, rasterize, and then rasterize. Right, so anytime I take an image from the stock photo module here, I'm rasterizing that image. It's just kind of the first thing I do, because if I don't, then later on in the editing process, something happens and I can't figure out why my brush isn't working. And then later on I discover it's because, well, I'm really trying to work on a layer that I cannot modify. So I'm getting that out of the way. Cool. Now, here's where we're at. We've got our background water. We've got an eye somewhat situated near the horizon. And the next thing we need to do is cut this eye out from the body around it. Now, there's a whole bunch of tools that can help us do this. I'm going to show you a quick and relatively easy way. It may not be the fastest way. It may not be the most accurate way, but it's going to be easy. So here we go. Let's zoom in a bit, like so. And then let's make sure in our layer studio that we're on the layer with the picture of the eye, because that's the one that we want to be working on. Let's go over here to this icon right here. It looks like a circle. It's the fifth one in on the top. This is our selections persona. When we switch on the selections persona, you notice the tools over here in the toolbar change. And all these tools over here are now all designed to help us select this eye from its background. What we're going to use, the tool we're going to use is the one that's right under the arrow. It looks like a paintbrush kind of with a selection under it. It's called the Smart Selection Brush. It's the fourth icon down. Let's make sure you're on the Smart Selection Brush. Double check over here in your layers studio that you're on the eye layer, and that layer is a pixel layer, right? So that's where you need to be. Now, we're on our tool, we're on our pixel layer, everything's groovy. I'm just gonna start drawing the area here that I want to select. And it tries to respect the lines and snap to them. But I'm not being super careful. I just want to make sure that I get all the hairs. And I don't care if I get much of the skin around them. I want to make sure that the entire area I want is selected with no more. Right? Make sure everything I want is inside the selected area with as little as possible else. And you can see the area because it's got these little marching ants around it. If I zoom in, you might be able to see that better. These little marching ants are selection, and you can see, I'm just going to add a little bit here because some of it was getting lost. You can see that it's covering the entire eye with a little bit of extra skin. That's where I want you to be. If you make a mistake, if you go too far, like I went a little bit too far here, we don't need all this skin right here. We don't really need that in our picture at the end. You can change the mode, right? So now we're on this tool here, the Smart Selection Brush. And down at the bottom, we get some tool options. Right? If you want to change this from adding to the selection to taking away from the selection, you can just change this mode here to subtract. And now when I paint, you can see it takes away the selection around the eye instead of adding to it. Right? And you can switch between those and refine your selection as much or as little as you need to, depending on your project. So they don't all have to be perfect. All projects aren't perfect. And there are better tools for selecting this more precisely. This is a fast, easy way to do fun Photoshop-y stuff. Okay. So now make sure you've got your whole eye and all of it that you want including the eyelashes and eyebrows, and not eyebrows, but eyelashes. And then we want to, in this toolbar down at the bottom, click the Refine button. So the Refine button gives us another set of tools still that helps us refine this selection so that we can help Affinity take out the skin. We don't want to show so much of the skin. We just want the eyeball and the hair. So let's click on this refine. If you don't see refine here, it's probably because you're not on the right tool. Make sure you're on the smart selection brush. If you don't see the smart selection brush, it's probably because you're not on the right persona. So make sure up at the top that your little circle icon here is the purple one. Right? You want this little, that's the one you want to be on here. Right? So this is important. This is important. And then you get this button. Right? So I hit the refine selection button and you can see what happens. It puts this red mask over the eye and it shows you the bits that are not selected. So in this selected bit is the eye and everything else around it is not selected. In here, right, we can by default have this, we have this tool that is it's a refine brush. So we take the brush and we can just brush over the areas that aren't so good. You know, these areas with the skin and the hair. And you can see it kind of paints a faint red highlight around the area. Right? I don't want to get too much of, I don't want to go too far with it, but you know, I paint like that. And you can see Affinity is now masked out the bits of skin, and it's done a fairly good job of leaving the hair. I mean, it looks weird against a red background, but when that's blended into our image, you're probably not going to notice that at all. Right? So that's probably for this tutorial, I'm going to call that level of doneness good enough for our selection. Though you can get very detailed here and select very precisely. And if you're doing something that's, you know, commercial, then you definitely want to do that. For playing around though, it's not that important. Let's keep doing that. Let's paint around the areas that we want Affinity to take a second look at. It's doing a pretty good job. It kind of is smart. It's not as smart as Photoshop is. Photoshop has a lot of developers working on it, and they have, you know, very sophisticated AI that can kind of auto-detect some of this stuff pretty well. But this does really well, especially for $10. I mean, this is a $10 app in the App Store. That's crazy. It's perfectly serviceable. All right. Now, this looks all right to me with the red overlay. Over in our preview options here at the bottom, let me point here. Down here, you can see that it's set to overlay. Overlay is what's showing us this the red kind of overlay. We can change this to black, right? And that would show us what it would look like against a black background. It looks a little weird. This kind of shadow area is messed up. This hair area is kind of messed up. And then there's this weird dot up here. That's pretty strange. That's pretty strange. So what I'm going to do is next to the preview options, I have this adjustment tool. So it's set to matte by default, and I'm going to change this right now to background. So there's a few options in there. If you click on it, you get a menu. There's foreground, background, feather, and matte, I think. This is a slidey menu. Let's change this to background. And now I'm going to paint over that area where I obviously accidentally touched with my pencil and tell Affinity this really was the background and we don't want that to be in the foreground. It does some selections and tries to help out there. And then I'm also going to paint out this weird kind of brown area around the top of the eye here. As I zoom in, you can kind of see this brown fringy bit. I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to just paint it out like so. Right? Now we just have kind of an eye and some hairs poking out over here. Cool. And the next thing I want to do is output this selection. But where it says output here, we have some options. We could output it straight to a selection, which would be put the marching ants around it. But I don't want to do that. I want to output it to a new layer with a mask. Right? A new layer with a mask. If you remember what a mask is, we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's sort of a sublayer that's put on top of a layer that allows you to show or hide parts of that layer. It's kind of like, I don't know about you, but back in elementary school, we used to do like crayon art on a piece of paper, and then we would cover that with black, and then we would scratch it. And when we scratched it, it would make the different, like rainbow colored, and you could kind of draw that way. That's sort of what the black crayon on that would be the layer mask, where when it's all black, it's covering up your layer, and then you can kind of scratch away or paint white to reveal parts of your layer. That's what we're going to do here. So let's, in the output menu here, change that to new layer with mask. And then select apply. And see what happens. Now, it's taken away the background, the parts that we didn't have selected in the eye, and it kind of almost looks like the eye is in the water. I mean, it's not perfect. We're gonna need to do some cleanup around it to make it better, but now we have a cool eye. Great. If we open up our layers studio over here, our little stack, you'll see that next to our eye layer here, it's added a mask. And that mask, it's probably tough to see on my screen, but that mask is turned white. So all we really did when we changed that slider to new mask with new layer with a mask, we applied our selection to this new layer, this new pixel layer with this mask. It's very cool. It created these for us. So you can see the mask, the white part that's painted white is the eye that's visible, and then everything that's not painted white is gone. Right. That's cool. Let's clean it up a little bit. Let's open up our Layers Studio, click on that mask, right, and then let's grab our brush tool. So our brush tool, to get to it, you're not going to see it on the left because we're still in the select persona. So when you're in the select persona, it changes all the tools over here to select related tools. So we need to go back to the photo persona, and the personas are at the top here. So then you want the one to be purple to be the little aperture guy. Everything else should be grayed out. So that lets you know that you're on the photo persona. And when we go to the photo persona, we get all these different tools. And the one that we want to work on this mask is the brush tool. So we're on the paintbrush tool. Next, I want to select my brush. The brushes are all stored over here. It is the fourth icon down. It looks like a little paintbrush. Right? There's a bunch of sections of brushes here, and you can select different ones. I'm going to take a nice, round, soft brush. Right? So I'm going to grab the one that says round, soft brush. And then I'm going to take my width here. You'll see, since we're on the brush tool, my menu down here has changed to brush-related settings. So I'm going to take my width with my finger and just raise it and make a pretty big brush. So I'm setting it to about 300 right now. And then you'll see, if you just look across what the brush tool did for us when we selected that, it set the flow kind of low. It set it to 39%, and the hardness is 39%. So this should be a kind of feathery type brush where when I paint on this, it should be very smooth, right? So let's open up our layers here, the pancakes, and just make sure again that we're on our mask. So we should be on this. It should look like a white fill-in of an eye, right? And we're just gonna make sure that our color here or here, you can pick color either place, is set to black. So you could just grab this and pull it all the way into the black corner if it's not black already. Make sure we're on black. If you think about how a mask works, white reveals things and black conceals them. So we want to paint in black because we're going to try and clean up some of this kind of ugliness around the eye. So we have a soft round brush. We're on our brush tool, and I'm just going to start painting slowly. Let me make sure this is doing what I expect. I don't want to make a fool of myself. Bum, 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 bum. No, I'm on the eraser tool. I keep hitting it with my hand. All right, there we go. This is definitely doing what I expect. So make sure you're on the brush tool. I keep hitting the eraser tool with my hand and it messes me up. And then make sure your hardness is not very hard. It's like 10%-ish. Like flow is set to 39% right now. I think we should drop that down even more because my testing there was kind of heavy. So I'm going to drop that down to 10%. So that's what I want your brush to look like. It should be about 300 width. It doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere around 300. An opacity of 100. Set your flow to 10% and set the hardness to 10%. So you'll have a nice soft brush that's not applying a lot of change. This way you can feather it in and it looks less photoshopped, right? And now let's just go around our eye and kind of clean up those spots that look smudgy and weird so that it blends a little bit better. Like up here around the hairs. I'm just cleaning it up. Let me zoom in, maybe you can see better. Now, I want to show you what I just did with the brush because I don't think you could see it before. So to go back to undo what I just did, I'm going to take 2 fingers and tap them both at the same time on the screen. That means undo, right? So you could see this kind of gross brown residue. I'm just kind of feathering. This is a brush. It's going over the hairs too. It's making them a little bit darker. I could make this brush smaller if I really wanted to get in there. And I'm just kind of cleaning that up. This is just painting it away, right? So I'm painting with the color black over a mask on this eye layer, and it's just painting bits away. Now there's parts over here that are gross. So I'm gonna do the same thing and just kind of paint them away. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect because don't forget, we have another layer to put on top of this. We're gonna also blend the sky in here, right? And that's gonna be crazy. So cool. Now we have an eye that's sitting in the water. It's not a perfect selection. There's some weirdness going on here. We don't love it. That's all right. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. We can cover up a lot of things we need to cover up. Now, is everybody with me so far? Let's make sure everybody's good. I'm just going to give you a minute or so to catch up. All right, so here's where we're at with our image. I'm going to open up my layers so you can just review and make sure yours look the same. We have a background image that we started with. That's our water and the sky that's there right now. Then we have a pixel image here that is not turned on. This is the image we were working on when we originally selected our eye, right? We made that selection and then it put that red overlay over everything and we refined our selection. And when we finally were ready to apply our selection, we applied it to a new layer with a layer mask. That's how this was created. This is our new layer and this is that layer mask. And then we took our paintbrush tool and with the color black and a very soft brush, we just kind of feathered around the eye to hide some of those imperfections in the selection. That's where we're at so far. That's where I hope you're at. Now, excellent. The next step is to replace our sky because, I don't know, it's not dramatic enough. That's just kind of a blah sky. So we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to grab over here our stock studio. So let's open up the stock studio. Make sure you're on pixels so we're working from the same images. And let's type in sky. And we get a whole bunch of skies. They're pretty cool. I am gravitating already, though, towards this one, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down. 7 down on the right. It's very dark, and it kind of looks like the opposite of our water, right? Where the darkness is on the top and the, yeah. So I'm going to grab this one. Hopefully you can see that. And that is imported into my picture, right? Now, we need to resize it because obviously it's just showing us a little square of the clouds, and that's not what we want. But look what happens when I zoom out. I'm not seeing those those blue resize bars, and that's because I'm not on the correct tool. That can be very confusing. So if you're importing an image and you need to resize that image or mess with it or move it around, you need to make sure that we've selected the move tool. The move tool is the arrow tool. It's the third one down right here. So make sure you're on the arrow tool, and when you select the arrow tool, now we can see these move lines, right? Again, if you don't see those lines, it may be because you're zoomed in too far to see them, right? Now I'm zoomed in so far I can't even see the boundaries of the image. So zoom out, make sure you're on the right tool, the move tool, the arrow, and then you should have these. Right, now I'm going to take from the edge, I'm just going to take this and pull it down so it's similar size, so it covers the area we want, and then I'm going to move it up. Like that. Cool. The problem here, obviously, is that it's covering up our cool eye, and we don't like that. So let's open up our layers here, and let's look at our image that we just imported. Oh no, look at our image. It says image. That means we're gonna probably do some work on here and get disappointed later when we're not able to change that. We're not able to change it because it's locked. It's immutable, cannot be changed. So we're gonna have to convert this to a type that can be changed. Let's go up here to our contextual more menu, right? That's where we wanna be. Select rasterize, and then rasterize again. See, it didn't work for me because I had neglected to first select this image. Make sure that you've got your image actually selected in the layers here, and then do those steps. So the more menu, rasterize, and rasterize. And you'll see that our image layer has been converted to a now changeable, mutable pixel layer. Great. I want to be able to see the eye behind the sky though. So in order to do that, just to kind of get my bearings, I'm going to click this more menu in the layers dialog, right here. It's a circle with 3 dots in it, and it's inside your layers studio. If you click on that, you get some options for the layer itself. And the one that you'll probably use most often is opacity. So now we can take the opacity of this sky layer and just kind of turn it down a bit so we can see what's going on. Right? And as I turn that down to about, let's turn it down to 60%, now we can see where our eye is, right? And now it's kind of bothering me that the eye's not centered. So I'm going to move it. So yours might be centered if you're better than me. I hope it is. I'm going to go back to my layers here. I'm going to select my pixel layer and my mask. I guess I don't have to select them both. Must be selected by default. So I'm going to select this one, the eye, and then I'm just going to kind of move that over here so it's a little more centered. This is another benefit of working with layers, right? You can't do this if we had just put that directly on top of a layer that existed. We wouldn't be able to separate them and then move them and resize them and work with them later. So this is why we work with layers. This is very cool. Here we go. That could work. It's interesting because now that we've changed the opacity, we can kind of see the clouds in front of the eye, which is an interesting effect. Wasn't what I was going for though. So let's continue working with our masks here. I can see something strange up at the top here. I've got this little bar. Let's just move. What layer is it that's controlling that? It's annoying me. Is it this one? There we go. Cool. So here we go. We've got our eye. We've set our opacity on the new sky that we put on the image here to like 60%. So this sky is actually sitting on top of the eye, and we're looking through it a little bit right now. That's well and good, and you could call this image kind of done here, except it can be better. I think we can make it better, and we'll make it better by hiding the bits of the sky that we don't want. So what we're going to do is apply a new mask to the sky. Let's grab sky here. And let's go to new, right? I'm going to hit this plus. Let me slow down here and make sure you're with me. So, what we want to do is we want to show this sky, but only up to about where the water ends, right? We don't want to show the sky all the way down here because it's darkening this water in a weird way and it's kind of covering our eye in a weird way, and that's weird. So, we want to hide it from those spots. To do that, we're going to put a mask on top of that layer, and then we're going to paint on that mask with black to cover up those spots. So to apply a new mask to a layer, we open up our Layers Studio here. It's that stack. We select the layer that we want the mask on, right? Make sure that's the one that's got the highlight on it. And then you go to this little plus. Plus could be to create a new layer. It can also be to create a new mask. So we're going to hit the plus key, and then you get a little menu here. And in that menu, we want to create a new mask layer, right? So let's empty mask layer. Oop, sorry. I put the wrong one. New mask layer. Right. Cool. Nothing should happen to your photo, so don't get alarmed if nothing happens. Let's open up the studio and see what we did. So now we have our picture here, and there's this white mask on the picture. The white mask is saying, reveal the whole photo. I want to see everything is all white. We want to hide this. You can kind of see where the old photo ends and the new one begins. This line where it's darker. That looks really bad. It looks like a terrible Photoshop. So let's zoom out a little bit. I just moved it with my finger accidentally. Sometimes that happens. Just moving stuff around a little bit. Make sure I have it where it should be. So great. We've got our new mask here. Let's select our layer. Make sure you're on our sky layer. Select the mask. Make sure we're working on our mask. And then select the brush tool. The brush tool's over on the left. It looks like a paintbrush. Right, so it's right here. Click on the brush tool. If you don't see the brush tool, for whatever reason, I'm going to guess it's because you're not in the photo persona. The personas are up here at the top. So make sure that your persona, the one that's colored in, looks like a aperture thing. Right? So make sure you're in photo persona. Make sure you got the brush tool. And then make sure that your color is black. Let's make sure this is black. Okay. Away color wheel. Cool. Now, I'm just going to start kind of painting over the sky. See what happens where I paint? Things start to brighten up. It's brightening up the sky around here. Painting it off the eye. Brightening up the sky. What we're doing is not... this is actually the opposite of what we want to be doing. I'm hiding the whole image. I just want to show you what it does. Right. See what it did? We were painting with black and hiding this image over the eye. You know, it's taken a long time to go away because we're using a really soft brush with a really small flow. But the more I paint over here, the more I'm hiding the image. We don't want to hide it, though. We want to bring it back because this is the sky we want to use. We want to use the new sky that's kind of opaque. So, check this out. Let's go to the Layer Studio. Let's select our pixel layer again. And let's turn our opacity back up. Let's go back up to like... just so I can barely see the eye. I'm going to take it to 80. That's very cool. All right. Now, let's paint the mask away. Select... oh, I should tell you about this. Right. Once we go into these layer options here, when I tell you to hit this little contextual menu, the way to get back to it, it keeps bringing you back to this menu until you use this little back arrow. When you use this little back arrow, it goes back to your layers. That can be annoying, so I'm sorry if I lost you there. Right. Click on the contextual more menu. This is giving you your opacity slider. And let's set that to about 80-ish, just so we can see what we're doing. And then use this little arrow to go back. Right? That brings us back to our layers. Now I want to select the mask, because the mask is what we're painting on. We're painting on the bit because we want to hide this layer. So let's start doing it. So I'm just fading this in so you don't see this harsh line here anymore. And the water comes right up. Awesome. And then I don't want to show the sky on the eye, so I'm going to do this. And we're going to shade in the eye too. So what we're doing, if you haven't grasped it yet, and what we're going to continue doing, oh, actually we're not. We're not going to continue doing it. We're 2 hours in. What we're going to do next week with our next photo is going to build upon this. Right? So now I've kind of faded in our new sky with our eye. This bit over here looks a little weird. Let's see if I can, I don't know where that's coming from. Yeah, let's go back. So now I'm going to change this to white, and I'm just going to paint white around it. And I want to paint that photo back in around this eye. I'm going to use white and black around the eye until it fades naturally. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to go back to my layers here. I'm going to select my pixel layer, the one for the sky. Right? And I'm going to click on this More menu, turn my opacity all the way back up to bring the color and the detail back in our new sky. So now we can see it. So now you can see our new sky is going around the eye. The eye is kind of in the middle of the water. It's fairly okay blended in there. We could do a better job. I mean, we could take as long as we want. If we want to continue working on this photo, we can find more images. You can put a mountain range inside the eye, or you could put stars, constellation, whatever your creativity is, whatever it is you want to put in there, a bridge or a boat. You can just look for it in these stock studios, pull it in, and then follow these concepts. So it's important that you understand layers and masks to do this kind of work. I know it goes by fast, and it can be hard to follow along with. And don't get discouraged by that, because it's going to take going through it 10, 20, 50 times before you start to understand and start to take these tools and concepts and apply them to your own artwork. All of these sort of effects that I'm doing are just things that I found other people doing. I've seen people do Instagram posts that are cool, and I've looked up, how do I do that effect? And then I watched somebody do what I'm doing right now, and I got lost and I fell off, and I had to restart the video, and I had to go back, and I've been through all that, so I understand. It's okay. We'll just do it. We'll just go over it. And I don't know. I'm not doing anything on Saturday mornings. I think we're at about 12 o'clock. We got 15 minutes left. I'm going to leave that open for questions, I think. And let's end this photo here. Next week, I think, if we're doing a thing, then we could move on and either take this photo further, or we could do something like this. It's all the same techniques, and it's the repetition of them that's going to help you understand them. What do you think of Affinity Photo? I think this is very powerful software for the money that they're asking for it. And the 90-day free trial is, I mean, it's hard to complain about. That's 3 months of playing with this. You get all these free images to mess around with. You can work with your photos. You can draw or paint. There's a lot going on here. With the last few minutes here, let me just show you. Let's jump over into the wonderful world of my desktop, and I'm going to show you what this would look like on a computer as opposed to on an iPad, because a lot of people work with computers. That makes good sense. So let's pop over here to me, my beautiful face. Hi, how are you guys doing? And let's pop over to Luke World. Here we're in Luke World. Welcome to my world. And you should see my desktop. So let's hide some of this stuff. Very cluttered man. It's my show notes. And let's pull up this image. This is not actually Affinity Desktop. This is actually the image of my iPad. Let's hide that for a second. And let's open up Affinity Photo. Where is it? There it is, Affinity Photo. It's telling me that I have 89 days left on this 90-day product key, which is very generous. I'm just gonna say let's continue this trial. I bought this software for Mac. I just don't rebuy it on Windows again. Though I understand why they charge like that, and I don't fault them for charging. I think they actually are charging a really, really fair price for really, really great software, even without the deals. So here we go. This is what the desktop version looks like. It's pretty similar, right? You have, instead of having your studios that pop out, they're just kind of always open here, like Photoshop. This is very similar looking to Photoshop. All your tools are in the same place. Let's create a new document. Works the same way. I'm gonna go to new. Let's pick web, and then down at the bottom here, we can make a square. This is all exactly the same. Well, it's not exactly the same, but all the functionality is mirrored across the desktop and the iPad. So now we have our square. I can use my, this is what I would use if I was working on the desktop. I would use my mouse. I'd use my Wacom tablet here, which maybe I'll go more into detail about because I do think they're really important for this kind of work. So this is how I would work with the desktop version, similar to the iPad, but you can't do this on the couch really. And we have all our same stuff here. So actually, I don't know where stuff is in the desktop version. I was looking for the stock studio. I'm guessing that it's just not up here by, oh, there it is. Whoop. I just didn't see it. Here it is right here, stock. So we have all the same stock options here. If we look for an eye in the photo version, boom, we get even the same eyes, and we could make this same photo. And same thing applies. We're gonna have to zoom out, which is, I think, space control zoomy. And then we're gonna have to select our move tools so we can see our little move boxes. And this is all very familiar. And I think after you do this a couple of times, if you open up Photoshop again, that's all gonna look familiar to you too, because these are all pretty much the same thing in slightly different ways. Affinity is faster in a lot of ways. It's buggier in a lot of ways. Neither of them are perfect. I wouldn't say, yeah, I would. I would say Photoshop is better than Affinity. But that's just because Photoshop's had 30 years of development. It's also slow and incredibly frustrating and crashy at times. So, you know, like any software, it's not perfect, but look at what we're able to make and create with this stuff that people just made out of lines of text on paper. It blows my mind every time. That's where we're at. I hope everybody's enjoying. Let me pull up the chat here and make sure there's no questions here to answer. Anybody got any questions? Nope, looks like we're good there. Then, if no opposition, I'm gonna roll an outro, and we'll call it a day. I think there's also another presentation going on. Dennis is doing one, right? I don't remember what time everything's going on. Dennis is doing a presentation on GarageBand. That might have already happened. That happened from 9 to 10. I'm sorry I missed it, but I will check out the video. And Laura is painting. It's always fun to watch Laura paint. So if you're not doing anything today, I would highly recommend that you spend a minute and watch your local painter paint some kind of, I don't even know what she's doing. It's going to be a good time. Anyway, I'm going to swap back to me for a second. I'll address the nation. Here's my address to the nation. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with me. Sorry we didn't get to go as far as I expected we would. I'm not that surprised. It seems to happen all the time. But this is where we ended up. And that's kind of cool. So hopefully some of you were able to get to the eye photo with me or somewhere near it. If not, watch the video again 2-3 times. If you get these concepts, if you like this, let us know and we'll do it more. Otherwise, we'll do something else. So, yeah, participate. Let me know what it is that you are interested in. Cool, cool, cool. Let's roll an outro.